Welcome to the series of Driftaway Tailies. Chapter 1. The Disappearing Melody. On the morning, the posters went up in Heatherbridge bold black letters promising a grand charity concert in aid of the infirmary. Miss Jane Marple arrived to take tea with her friend Mrs. Effie Hartwell and admire the chrysanthemums. It was the kind of morning that flatters English villages into thinking nothing unfortunate can happen to them. Sparrows busy about important trifles, a respectable sun glancing off the church weathercock, and the green looking as if it had been ironed by Providence itself. Mrs. Hartwell, Miss Marple observed gently, has contrived to grow chrysanthemums that look as if they had been brought up by governesses so well behaved. They are, said Mrs. Hartwell with a firm pride, unlike our new conductor, who demands that everyone breathe at the same time. Imagine making a woman breathe on command. Miss Marple smiled into her teacup. In villages, breath was seldom regulated, but gossip often was, and the charity concert promised both higher culture and higher spirits. Posters named the visiting star, Clara Winslow, a very young violinist whose photograph oval face, serious eyes had been pasted in the hall window. Beneath, in smaller print, appeared, under the baton of Mr. Lionel Reeves, sponsored by Mrs. Helena Frost of Heatherbridge Hall. It is a good thing for the infirmary, Mrs. Hartwell went on, pouring second cups, as if the first had been only rehearsal. And good for us. Mrs. Frost likes to be thanked in public. Mr. Reeves likes to be obeyed in public. The only one who does not like being anything in public is Clara Winslow. Shy, I dare say. Shyness, Miss Marple said, is often a very careful curtain. By afternoon the village hall had become a hive. Chairs ranked in rows like soldiers at ease, bunting attempting. More frightened vibrato. You must not imagine, Miss Dale, you must perform. On a side bench, Clara Winslow sat with her violin case on her knees, and looked, not shy exactly, but very far away, as if her attention were a bird she had sent across the fields and was not sure would return. She was slight and carefully dressed in the inexpensive neatness of girls who have learned that their appearance must apologize for their circumstances. Her dark hair was pinned with economy. Her hands were long, with a small white scar across the left index knuckle that a player would remember and an audience would not see. Miss Marple, who had sat in many halls, listening to many rehearsals for the sake of parish causes, slipped into a place near the back and folded her hands. She had come ostensibly to count the programs, but in truth to watch. Old ladies who watch our furniture until chairs need moving. Then they become useful. Clara rose at last when called, opened her case with a neat hand, and drew out the violin. It was not a fine instrument, no amber cremona, but it had been cared for. She tucked it beneath her chin with a familiarity that softened something in her face, and for a moment the faraway look dissolved. Then she played. The first notes were plain and true, without that vanity of tone young players often mistake for art. A batch andante unfurled itself like a ribbon being drawn from a drawer. It was not made larger than it was nor smaller. It was simply itself. Reeves closed his eyes as if appropriating the purity for his own credit. The hall, which had not meant to listen, quietly did. When the movement ended, Reeves smiled with his teeth. "You see," he said to no one and everyone, "what is possible when discipline meets talent." His gaze jerked to the second violins. "Now try not to ruin it." Between pieces there was bustle. Miss Marple drifted, as thistledown drifts, and landed by no accident near the side door where the sponsor, Mrs. Helena Frost, had installed herself like a fashion plate from an advertisement for expensive biscuits. She was elegant in the manner that makes good women nervous and men reassuring, a woman who had learned to appear perfectly. Her gloves were suede, her brooch a discreet square of clear stones, her hair excellent. She spoke to Reeves as if to a tradesman she patronized with affection. "And the girl?" she said, voice smooth. "She will do?" "She will do if she obeys," Reeves returned. "They always do. Until they don't." Mrs. Frost's mouth made the kind of smile that can be mistaken for kindness by anyone who wishes to be mistaken. "I so adore young talent," she murmured, and her eyes did not travel to Clara at all. A man's shadow briefly filled the doorway. Miss Marple looked up into a face lined by weather and habit. Edgar Winslow, Clara's father, wore his old army, mustache like a badge and his dignity like an order not to be questioned. He glanced at his daughter, at Reeves, at Mrs. Frost, and then away, as if none of them were exactly what he had bargained for. Fathers, Miss Marple thought, often bargain with the world, and are astonished when the world writes its own contract. Rehearsal ended at last with that particular fatigue that is never relieved by applause because there is none. Musicians gathered their bits. Chairs made their little hinge noises. Reeves arranged to be thanked. Mrs. Frost arranged to be seen. Edgar Winslow arranged to be obeyed. "Home," he said to Clara, and his hand on her arm turned the word from invitation into command. Clara did not flinch. "Yes, father," she said quietly, and Miss Marple heard in the evenness a careful practice of calm. She did not, however, close her case immediately. She took from the side pocket a folded sheet of music and slipped it between the lining and the wood. It was done with so light a hand that even a watching eye might have missed it. Miss Marple did not. Outside a wind had risen, and the yellow leaves hurried along the road like urgent messages. Miss Marple declined Mrs. Hartwell's offer of a lift, preferring to walk. Motion often shakes loose the bit of thought that will not name itself. At the corner by the old church she paused. The ewe there was, older than honesty and twice as patient. Behind it the ground fell away to a little path leading to the rectory garden and thence to the lane. It was a path meant for people who did not wish to be observed using the front. A boy's bicycle had been propped against the wall, and boys are informants if properly addressed. "Freddie," Miss Marple said cheerfully, "your mother will suppose you've been very busy." Freddie, a boy with good ears and poor alibis, blushed. "Saw the lady, miss?" he offered in a rush. "The posh one from the hall. She came out the side door just now and went toward the back lane like she didn't want the main road. Didn't see me." "Posh ladies rarely do," Miss Marple said. "Did she speak to anyone?" Freddie thought. "The music man," he said. "Only he came out by the vestry, and they didn't talk, just looked. Like when Dad and Mum are having the quiet sort of shouting." "Ah," said Miss Marple, which is a syllable that can mean a great deal when said by a woman of experience. That evening Miss Marple took her supper at her lodgings with the contentment of simple arrangements. At 9, as she knitted a row that refused to understand its pattern, the first ripple of trouble reached her. Mrs. Hartwell's maid, breathless with the right kind of panic, knocked and blurted, "Miss, they can't find the girl. The violinist. She's gone." "Gone?" Miss Marple repeated, her needles stilling. "They say she ran off. Mr. Reeves says artists do. Mr. Winslow says she will be home when she remembers her duty. But—" the maid faltered. "Mrs. Bell at the lodging-house sent me. She found something by the church." "Something?" "The violin," the maid whispered, as one whispers the wrong word at the wrong time. "Smashed?" For a violin, even a modest one, there is a kind of death that is not mere damage." Miss Marple rose at once and took her shawl. The churchyard at night is not frightening to those who have loved churches by day. It is merely honest. Lanterns moved like small planets near the yew. Inspector Hull, a tidy man with tidy doubts, stood with his constable and the landlady, Mrs. Marjorie Bell, who had the look of a woman whose decency has been used as leverage. "It was by the wall," Mrs. Bell said dully, "as if dropped there and someone thought better and stamped it. That's not accident, Inspector. That's temper." Miss Marple bent without touching the ruined instrument. The bridge had snapped. The belly was cracked where a boot had driven it. The strings lay like slack sewing. But it was not only destruction, it was containment. No pieces had been taken. The case was absent. There was no rain on the wood, though there had been a mist toward evening. It had not lain there long. "Miss Marple," Inspector Holly said with the sort of politeness one uses when one is not yet certain an old lady is useful, "we've a girl missing who is likely to have taken fright, and a father who is certain she has taken liberties. Mr. Reeves speaks of temperament. Mrs. Frost speaks of nerves. The violin well. Perhaps she dropped it, fancied herself tragic, then ran off. Girls," Mrs. Bell said stoutly, "do not smash their bread and butter because they are cross. They weep into it and then eat it anyway." Miss Marple's eyes, mild as teacups, were not mild at all. "A violin," she said, "is more than bread and butter. Those who love them do not break them unless they wish to bury something inside." Inspector Howe frowned. "Bury what?" "Evidence," Miss Marple said gently, "or a message. Though in this case I suspect a different thing. Protection. From what or whom we must discover." She straightened and looked about. The grass bore marks of 2 pair of feet, one heavier, one careful. The careful steps turned toward the back lane. The heavier had hesitated, circled, returned. Beneath the yew lay a small, crumpled page that the lantern mist and habit caught, a torn corner of manuscript. Paper with 4 notes inked in a neat hand D, BGE, ascending gently. On the edge, a penciled word, "Mother." Miss Marple folded the scrap and placed it in her reticule. She had seen Clara slip something into her case lining earlier, a lullaby perhaps, a secret certain people would not understand. Girls who have secrets sometimes hide them where their hands are brave. She looked at the smashed violin again, and, seeing it, saw not only an instrument destroyed, but a message asserted, "She will not play for you." Whether that was Clara's message or another's remained to be known. "Inspector," Miss Marple said, and her voice had a quality villagers recognize as the moment before a sensible woman rearranges a room. If Clara Winslow had run away, she would not leave the one thing that allows her to speak. Someone has translated her silence for her. She paused. And someone else perhaps has told a story to be believed because it is convenient. Which someone? Holly asked, annoyed with the vagueness of the world. Miss Marple's smile was apologetic. "The sort," she said mildly, "who uses words like discipline and nerves and believes that private arrangements are always better than truth. Do be careful, Inspector, of men who speak beautifully about propriety and women who speak beautifully about patronage. They often have the untidiest cupboards." The church clock told the quarter. Lanterns made their small, brave light. Somewhere a fox barked, impertinent and right. Miss Marple drew her shawl close, as if to tether her thoughts, and said half to herself and half to the night, "A broken violin does not mean a broken girl." Let us find first where the music has gone. Chapter 2. Shadows at Rehearsal. Morning in Heatherbridge usually unfolded with the predictable rhythm of a contented village coal carts rattling over cobbles, milk bottles clinking at doorsteps, and Mrs. Price scrubbing her front steps with righteous vigor. But the morning after Clara Winslow vanished, the village seemed to hold its breath. Voices spoke more quietly. Curtains twitched more often, and the good people of Heatherbridge found mystery rather harder to endure than weather or taxes. Miss Marple walked alone toward the village hall, where Inspector Howe had resumed his investigation. Since discovering Clara's shattered violin beneath the ancient yew tree, she had let silence be her companion. Silence, she found, made room for thought. Outside the hall, a small crowd of villagers formed a knot of speculation. "She ran off with a foreigner," declared Mrs. Price knowingly. "Nonsense, kidnapped by a London impresario," insisted Mr. Timmins. "Smugglers," said young Freddie Hobson. "Smugglers love violins. No one asked why smugglers might require a violinist." Miss Marple slipped past them into the hall, where Lionel Reeves, the conductor, stood facing Inspector Hawley. Reeves carried authority the way others carried umbrellas, neatly and with habitual ease. His black suit was immaculate, his hair perfectly parted, his disdain politely concealed. "I have nothing more to add, Inspector," Reeves said coolly. "I last saw Clara yesterday at rehearsal. She left with her father. If she has fled from duty, I cannot be held accountable." "This is not a matter of disobedience," said Hawley. "A young woman is missing. Her violin was found smashed deliberately." Reeves shrugged. "Artists are emotional creatures." Miss Marple stepped forward. "But that violin was not broken emotionally, Mr. Reeves. It was broken violently. There is, I think, a significant difference." Reeves turned to her with a smile dipped in disdain. "Ah, Miss Marple, with respect, this is a police investigation, not a village matter." "A murderer," said Miss Marple gently, "is often tidy about what he calls a scandal." Inspector Hall shot her a warning look, not that she noticed. She had already wandered to the piano, fingertips brushing its surface. The day before, she had glimpsed something inside an edge of burnt paper. Now, as Hawley and Reeves sparred, she coaxed a charred scrap from beneath the strings. Before she could examine it, the hall door burst open. Edgar Winslow strode in, a soldier by posture, a father by grief. His dark jacket was brushed but worn. Dignity, like his shoes, had been polished for the day. "Inspector," he said curtly, "have you found my daughter?" "Not yet," said Hawley. "We're following every lead." Winslow's gaze locked on Reeves, polite but hostile, as though the two had studied each other long enough to know they were not friends. "Your daughter was distressed," Reeves said smoothly. "Perhaps she needed time alone." "My daughter," said Winslow, "is disciplined. She does not disappear." Reeves lifted his baton case with theatrical calm. "Believe what you like. The concert must go on." "The concert," said Winslow sharply, "means nothing until Clara is found." "Oh, come now. These dramatic vanishing acts often burn out quickly." Miss Marple turned. "You speak as though you've seen them before." Reeves' composure slipped. "I've nothing more to say," he snapped, and left. A scrap of truth. Inspector Hall walked over to Miss Marple with faint exasperation. "I appreciate your help," he said carefully, "but please do not interfere with procedure." "Interfere?" she said pleasantly. "I am merely tidying thoughts, Inspector. I find it helpful while others tidy evidence." She handed him the charred scrap, burned edges, a line of music, and one surviving sentence. "He knows." Hal frowned. "Someone tried to burn this. Why?" "I imagine," said Miss Marple, glancing toward the door where Reeves had stood, "because someone did not wish it to be read. Mrs. Bell knows more than she says." Miss Marple next walked to Hawthorne Cottage, where Clara rented a room from Mrs. Marjorie Bell, a widow prone to gossip but not unkindness. Mrs. Bell opened the door with, "Oh, Miss Marple, this dreadful, dreadful business. I can hardly bear it. Clara was a good girl, quiet, too quiet." "May I see her room?" Mrs. Bell hesitated. Inspector Howell searched it already. But I suppose there's no harm in another pair of eyes. You're not here for trouble?" "No," said Miss Marple softly. "I'm here for truth." The hidden space between walls. Clara's bedroom was modest, neat, almost cautious in its order. The bed made, books aligned, pencils sharpened. A soul had lived here carefully. Miss Marple opened the wardrobe, 2 pressed dresses, and a folded blanket. On a shelf sat a locked box. "No key," said Mrs. Bell. Inspector tried. Miss Marple only smiled. Then Clara must have hidden it. She searched quietly. People rarely hide things far from where they use them. Her fingers traced the underside of the desk, a loose board behind a drawer. Hidden there lay a folded sheet of handwritten music. Lullaby for Mother, Truth in C minor. Odd. Clara's mother was said to be dead. Miss Marple slid the page into her bag. One last sweep of the room revealed something else, a loose seam in the wallpaper. Behind it, a narrow cavity. Inside, a scrap of a concert program marked by 2 fingerprints and a smear of dark red instrument resin. Reeves used such resin. So did Oliver Trent, the jealous amateur violinist who had quarreled with Clara the day before she vanished. Miss Marple stepped outside. Fog curled low around the hedges. As she reached the gate, Mrs. Bell hurried after her, eyes wide. There's something else I didn't tell the inspector," she whispered. "The night Clara vanished, someone came here asking for her." Miss Marple paused. "Who?" Mrs. Bell swallowed hard. "Her mother." "That's impossible," said Miss Marple. "Her mother is dead." Mrs. Bell shook her head. "That's what Clara told people, but the woman at my door said—" She lowered her voice. "Tell Clara I know who took her life away, and I've come back to make it right." Miss Marple stood in the road as fog drifted like a warning around her ankles. Someone was rewriting Clara's past and burying truth beneath silence. She looked toward the dark churchyard where the broken violin had been found. "Wherever Clara Winslow is," she whispered, "she is not alone. Someone else is playing this melody, and they mean it to end in silence." She tightened her shawl and walked on. The second movement of the mystery had begun. Chapter 3. The Man Who Lied. Approximately 800 words. The fog returned to Heatherbridge that evening, like an old suspicion, quiet, gray, and unwelcome. It moved through hedgerows and across fields as though it meant to settle over every unanswered question in the village. Miss Marple walked through it without hesitation. Fog, she always thought, was much like deception. Troublesome at first, but it never lasted forever. She had persuaded Inspector Heal, reluctantly, of course, to grant one more inquiry that evening. One man remained unaccounted for in all the stories and statements. A man who had been at the music rehearsal. A man who had argued with Clara Winslow shortly before she vanished. Oliver Trent. Talented enough to be noticed, not enough to be admired. Charming, though his charm was thin in places and cracked if pressed. He was exactly the sort of young man who might hide a dangerous truth behind a pleasant smile. His cottage, Ashwood, stood beyond the old stone bridge on the village's edge. Its roof sagged slightly, the front gate hung defeated, and once healthy rose bushes had long since surrendered. Miss Marple heard restless music from inside, someone playing not out of joy, but agitation. She knocked. The violin stopped mid-phrase. Silence followed, tense and deliberate. Then the door opened, and Oliver Trent stood there looking surprised, after just a fraction too long. "Miss Marple," he said with forced cheerfulness, "to what do I owe the pleasure? I was hoping we might have a word." He hesitated, then stepped aside. "Of course, do excuse the mess." The room looked as though a storm had passed through. Papers, sheet music, cigarette stubs, and cold cups of coffee covered every surface. The rug was worn to threadbare patches where someone had paced endlessly. Miss Marple seated herself before Oliver could offer. Politeness, when used correctly, could be quite disarming. "I wanted to ask," she said mildly, "about your last conversation with Clara during rehearsal. It seemed quite heated." Oliver shrugged as he sat opposite her. Musicians argue. Part of the life. Clara was dramatic. "I've found," Miss Marple replied, "that anger often hides fear." Oliver's eyes narrowed. "Fear of what?" "Fear of truth." She paused, watching his reaction. "Tell me, Mr. Trent, what secret was Clara afraid of?" He stared for a moment, then looked away. "I don't know what you think you've heard, but I had nothing to do with her disappearance." "Perhaps not," Miss Marple said gently, "but I do believe you lied." That pierced something. His shoulders stiffened. "Where were you after rehearsal?" she asked. "Here," he said quickly. "Alone." "A pity," Miss Marple replied softly. "An alibi is so much easier to maintain when someone else can confirm it," he faltered. "Are you accusing me?" "No," she said calmly. "I am merely repeating what Freddie Hobson saw someone who looked very much like you walking near the old churchyard at 7 o'clock, just before Clara's broken violin was found under the yew tree." Oliver's breath caught. "Freddie talks too much. He described your coat," Miss Marple added. The frayed collar, the missing button. His last layer of defiance slipped. He sank back into his chair. "All right," he muttered. "I was there. Why lie about it?" He didn't answer. "Did you meet her there?" Miss Marple asked. He nodded reluctantly. "She asked me, too." "For what purpose?" He hesitated, looking torn between distrust and relief. At last he spoke. "She wanted me to keep something safe for her." "What sort of something?" He closed his eyes. "A letter. Proof of who she really is." Miss Marple leaned forward. "Go on." "Clara found out recently she was adopted," he said. "Illegally adopted. Edgar Winslow is not her real father. He forged documents to hide it." Miss Marple didn't flinch. "She had suspected as much. She told no one," he went on, "except me. She'd been looking for answers, parish records, school forms. Nothing matched. Someone erased her past and did it very carefully. And this letter? It named her real mother," Oliver said. "She wanted me to hide it somewhere safe. She was frightened. Who is the mother?" He shook his head. "I never saw the name. I was too afraid to open it. I hid it and stood at an old boundary marker near the church path." "And now?" "Gone," he said bitterly. "Someone broke into this cottage last night, pulled everything apart searching for it." His voice lowered as he reached into his pocket. He placed something in Miss Marple's hand. A silver brooch, delicate, old, engraved with an oak leaf and shield. A crest. Miss Marple recognized it instantly. She had seen that crest pinned to a lady's glove earlier that week. "Helena Frost. Where did you find this?" she asked. "On the floor," Oliver said. "Whoever tore through this place dropped it. Why would Helena Frost want a letter about Clara?" Miss Marple turned the brooch over thoughtfully. "Perhaps, Mr. Trent, she wasn't searching for the letter. Perhaps she was searching for her child." Realization struck him. "You mean Mrs. Frost, Clara's mother?" Miss Marple rose, tucking the brooch into her pocket. "If so," she murmured, "we must ask why she never came forward, and what she fears now." Oliver stood, too, suddenly desperate. "You mustn't tell Inspector Holly. If word spreads about that letter, Clara might be harmed," Miss Marple finished. "Yes, I believe you're right," he blinked. "You do?" "I do, which is why we must find her before someone else does." He looked lost. "How? I've already failed her." Miss Marple placed a kind but firm hand on his shoulder. "Truth," she said softly, "is a very patient thing, Mr. Trent. It waits. And sooner or later someone slips and reveals more than they intended. All we must do is watch closely." Outside, the fog still lay over the village. But Miss Marple knew fog always thins at dawn, and this mystery was nearing dawn. Clara Winslow was still alive, but someone was doing everything in their power to silence her before the truth saw daylight. Chapter 4. Behind the Locked Door. Morning returned to Heatherbridge beneath a sky the color of pewter. Thin rain had passed earlier, leaving the air raw, unsettled. Chimney smoke drifted sideways, and the village felt strangely muted, as though holding its breath. Clara Winslow had now been missing for 2 days. Concern had curdled into fear. Miss Marple walked alone along the lane toward Heatherbridge Hall. Her pace was calm, her manner unhurried. Many underestimated her not, realizing that quiet observation, like a cat before a pounce, gathered more truth than a dozen interrogations. Today she intended to speak to Helena Frost, not as a gossiping villager, but as a woman who knew that fear leaves clues. Heatherbridge Hall rose cold and severe against the hills, a manor built for influence rather than warmth. Its windows were tall, its gardens bare and winter light. Before Miss Marple reached the bell, the door opened proof that someone inside had been watching her approach. "Miss Jane Marple to see Mrs. Frost," she said pleasantly. The butler frowned. "Madam is not receiving visitors." "Oh," she smiled kindly. "You may tell her I found her brooch." That broke his composure. "Brooch?" "Yes, silver crest, mother of pearl, oak leaf." He hesitated, then stepped aside. "Please this way." Helena Frost sat by the drawing-room window, poised as ever, a figure carved from elegance and ice. Her dove-gray silk dress matched the room, tasteful, restrained, immaculate. Only the faint tremor at her wrist betrayed her tension. "You have something of mine," Helena said. Miss Marple handed her the brooch. Helena fastened it too quickly. Relief flickered in her eyes. "Where did you find it?" Helena asked. "In Oliver Trent's cottage," Miss Marple said gently. Helena stilled. "I don't understand." "It was discovered after his room had been searched," Miss Marple added. "For a letter Clara hid, a letter about her past." Helena stiffened. "I know nothing of any letter." "And yet," Miss Marple continued calmly, "you were in Mr. Trent's cottage last night. That brooch did not walk there by itself." Helena's mask cracked. "I did not break into anyone's home." "Then how did your brooch get there?" She recovered herself with a sharp lift of the chin. "I must have dropped it at rehearsal. Mr. Trent must have taken it home." "In his pocket," Miss Marple murmured, while ransacking his own belongings. Helena's breath caught. Miss Marple stepped nearer. "A lost brooch is curiosity, Mrs. Frost. A lost brooch in a crime scene, that is something else." Helena looked away, hands trembling. "You knew Clara," Miss Marple said softly. "Not merely as a pupil, not as a village girl. You knew her." For a moment Helena looked stricken. Then her voice came low, guarded. "I have nothing to say. She may still be alive," Miss Marple said. "Do you truly wish to remain silent?" Helena closed herself off again. Her eyes turned cold. "This conversation is over." For now, Miss Marple thought. For now, Miss Marple did not leave immediately. On her way out, she noticed something no ordinary caller would. Faint scratch marks near a side door of the east wing. Marks made by a key used in haste over and over. Someone had entered or left this house secretly. Recently. Secrets at Heatherbridge Hall were not only emotional, they were physical, locked behind doors. Miss Marple walked back toward the village. Her mind began to sort threads. A forged adoption, a missing girl, a stolen letter, Helena Frost's concealed connection, a secret entrance at the hall, and someone afraid enough to break into a cottage to destroy evidence. Miss Marple stopped next at the vicarage. Sympathy and tea were always available there, and both aided thought. "Do you truly believe Clara is alive?" asked Reverend Pritchard. "Yes," Miss Marple replied. "But fear is growing, and fear makes people careless." Mrs. Pritchard lowered her voice. "Is it true Helena Frost is Clara's mother?" "It is possible," Miss Marple said. Clara wrote a lullaby, a memory of love from early childhood. Memories like that do not come from nowhere. But then why hide it? Mrs. Pritchard asked. Because truth, Miss Marple replied, can be dangerous. The Reverend frowned. Dangerous for whom? That, Miss Marple said, standing, is what I intend to discover. By late afternoon, clouds settled low again, and Miss Marple walked to the old mill road. Edgar Winslow always passed that way alone at dusk, a habit of a man who disliked being watched. She found him there, staring across the fields. Mr. Winslow, she said quietly. He did not greet her. What do you want? A simple truth, she replied, about your daughter. Pain flickered in his eyes. She is my daughter. But not by birth, Miss Marple said gently. You adopted her, you raised her, you protected her, and you lied to her. She was happy, he said through clenched teeth, until someone poisoned her mind with the past. Children grow, Miss Marple said. Questions grow with them. You should have told her the truth. She wasn't ready. For what? He hesitated. Then his voice fell to a whisper. For the truth of her birth. Her mother gave her away to save her life. Miss Marple's breath stilled. From what? She asked. He turned to her at last, eyes full of dread. From the man who has her now. Night settled quickly as Miss Marple returned home. Lantern light flickered across her gate. She reached her cottage and froze. Her sitting-room window stood open. She stepped in. The room looked untouched, but she noticed instantly a moved basket, shifted papers. Subtle, deliberate. Someone had searched her home. She lifted her knitting basket. Beneath the wool lay a folded sheet of handwritten music. Clara's handwriting. Another lullaby piece. Hush, little one, don't tell. On the back a message. He watches from inside. Inside what? A floorboard creaked down the hallway. Someone was still in the cottage, listening. Miss Marple did not panic. She simply turned her head toward the sound and spoke with quiet certainty. You have made a very foolish mistake coming here, because desperate criminals hide. But only terrified ones follow the detective home. Chapter 5. The Midnight Trap. The sound came again, a soft shift of weight in the hallway, deliberate and patient. Whoever had entered Miss Marple's cottage was no common intruder. They were not frantic, they were waiting. Miss Marple did not reach for a lamp or cry out. Her breathing stayed steady, her manner almost serene, as she laid Clara's torn sheet of music gently on the table. She had expected this visitor. Not tonight, perhaps, but soon. She spoke in a calm, conversational tone, as though receiving company rather than facing danger. It is quite late for a visit, she said, but desperate people must often keep desperate hours. Silence answered her, the kind of silence shaped by listening. You searched my cottage before, Miss Marple continued, though you were more careful then. Today someone tried to rattle me not by taking, but by leaving something behind. That suggests impatience. And impatience, she added gently, is where mistakes begin, a faint exhale in the doorway. Only one question remains, Miss Marple said. Are you here to warn me or to silence me? That brought the shadow forward. Marjorie Bell. Clara's landlady stood in the doorway, her face lined by exhaustion, and something deeper fear hardened into resolve. Her apron was gone, her hair disordered, and her hands hung stiffly at her sides. Don't speak, Marjorie snapped. Don't shout. Just sit down. Miss Marple did sit, but with such composed obedience that Marjorie faltered, unsure whether she had gained control of the moment or lost it. My dear, Miss Marple said kindly, how long have you been afraid? Marjorie flinched. Don't pretend you understand. You meddle, you poke your nose into people's lives, but you don't know anything. That is true. Miss Marple said. "Until someone tells me." Marjorie's jaw tightened. "So you can hand me over to him?" Miss Marple's eyes watched her closely. "Who is him?" "You know who," Marjorie said bitterly. "Everyone knows. They're simply too afraid to speak. Men like him, men with power, women like me don't win against them." Miss Marple studied her a moment. "You mean Bernard Vale?" Marjorie gave a hard, humorless laugh. "No, worse." She stepped closer, unsteady but determined. Her voice dropped into something raw. "I wasn't supposed to let Clara stay with me," she said. "I knew the risk. I felt it the moment she arrived. She tried to hide it, tried so hard, but I know what hunted eyes look like. I've seen them in my own mirror." Miss Marple remained silent, letting truth gather itself. "She wasn't running from gossip," Marjorie whispered. "She was running from someone real, someone who hurt her mother, someone who meant to hurt Clara too, someone who doesn't stop." "Clara trusted you," Miss Marple said softly. Marjorie nodded. "She hid things in bits of music and scraps of letters she thought no one would notice. And she left something for me too, a letter explaining everything. I burned it. Most of it." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a fragment of paper, edges burned. "Except this." "I couldn't." Miss Marple opened it. One name stared back. Lionel Reeves. "Clara discovered who her real mother was," Marjorie said, "and she wanted to tell her. That's why she came back here to reveal the truth at last." "But Lionel Reeves found out first," Miss Marple murmured. "Yes," Marjorie said. "He threatened her, said he'd expose her adoption, destroy her career, make the village turn against her, unless she helped him." "To get something?" Miss Marple asked. Marjorie nodded. "Evidence. Proof. Reeves has been blackmailing Helena Frost for years." Miss Marple considered. "He knew she had a child before marriage." Marjorie nodded. "He used that secret to control her for money, influence, everything. Clara found out the truth, that Helena Frost is her mother. She thought Reeves would be powerless if she told Helena. But Reeves couldn't allow that. So he silenced her," Miss Marple said quietly. Marjorie shook her head. "He tried to, but I stopped him." Miss Marple's eyes sharpened slightly. "How?" Marjorie hesitated. Then she said, "I helped Clara escape." "Clara is alive," Miss Marple said quietly. Marjorie didn't answer, but her eyes gave the truth. "Where is she now?" Miss Marple asked. Marjorie shook her head. "She's safe. That's all you need to know. If Reeves finds her, he'll finish what he started. But Reeves believes she's dead," Miss Marple said slowly. "Yes," Marjorie replied, "because I made him think so." She closed her eyes, memory gripping her. He followed her into the woods that night. He cornered her. She screamed, but no one heard. "I was coming home and heard her. I hit him from behind. We ran. Clara was terrified, broken, but alive." "And you hid her," Miss Marple said. Marjorie nodded. "I tried hiding her in my house. But Reeves tore the place apart searching for her. So I moved her somewhere he'd never look." "In plain sight," Miss Marple murmured. "Close to you." Marjorie trembled. "Don't betray her, please." "I won't," Miss Marple said gently. "But you must help me stop Reeves for Clara's sake." Marjorie looked afraid again. "You don't understand. Reeves is careful. He has friends, money, people who owe him." "Yes," Miss Marple said. "Clever men always do. But they also make tidy mistakes." Miss Marple walked to the table and placed Clara's music sheet at the center. "He watches from inside," she read aloud. Clara meant it literally. "Reeves hides behind his role, inside the orchestra, inside the concert, inside respectability." Marjorie braced against fear. "He'll kill again if he realizes Clara survived." "Which," Miss Marple said, "is exactly why he must be made to believe that Clara is about to reveal everything tonight." Marjorie stared. How? We leave a message where he will find it, Miss Marple said. A message written in Clara's hand. A final page from her lullaby. A warning. Marjorie swallowed. And where do we leave it? Miss Marple looked at her calmly. At the concert hall. Marjorie rose slowly. Somewhere between fear and determination, she found strength. As long as Clara lives, she said, I'll help. Miss Marple touched her hand. Good. We begin now. Marjorie went to leave, then hesitated. You know where she is, don't you? Miss Marple smiled gently. The locked sick-room window that never opens, curtains always drawn. Fresh bread delivered daily far more than one woman needs. Marjorie closed her eyes. You won't tell Inspector Holly? Not yet, Miss Marple said firmly. Clara stays hidden until Reeves is caught. Marjorie slipped out into the night. Miss Marple turned back to her desk and began writing Clara's handwriting onto the bait note. Then she saw it in the reflection of the dark window. A shape. Watching. Listening. Someone had heard everything. Someone now knew Clara was alive. And someone very dangerous would not let her stay that way. Chapter 6. The Note in the Shadows. The church bell tolled 7 as twilight folded over Heatherbridge. Evening came earlier now, and with it came unease, an invisible dread that crept between houses and settled over narrow streets. Windows shut faster at dusk. Lamps were lit earlier. And everywhere Clara Winslow's name floated in low, fearful whispers. Miss Marple was not afraid of night. Darkness, she believed, revealed more than it concealed if one knew how to watch. Tonight she and Marjorie Bell were setting a trap, and like all clever traps, theirs required bait. The bait would be a message Lionel Reeves could not ignore. The village hall was deserted when Miss Marple and Marjorie slipped in through the side entrance. The door had been left unlocked just as Miss Marple predicted. Reeves often rehearsed here at solitary hours, confident that his authority protected him from suspicion. We've got 10 minutes, Marjorie whispered, glancing toward the windows. Maybe less. We'll need only 5, Miss Marple replied. I told the caretaker Mrs. Hartwell asked me to check concert programs. Marjorie managed a thin smile. People really do believe you're harmless. It's extremely useful, Miss Marple said. They crossed the silent hall to the conductor's stand. From her coat, Miss Marple withdrew a folded sheet of music, Clara's unfinished lullaby, or so it appeared. In truth, Miss Marple had written it herself, imitating Clara's handwriting with remarkable care. Across the top was Clara's familiar title, Lullaby for Truth. Beneath it, 3 ominous lines had been added. He watches, but he will be seen. Tomorrow I speak. The music hides everything. Marjorie shivered as she read it. He'll think Clara wrote this. He must, Miss Marple said. He must believe she hid evidence, something that could expose him. And you're sure he won't just destroy it? No. Murderers like Reeves don't burn clues. They study them, control them. Marjorie nodded grimly. She knew the type. Miss Marple slid the forged page into Reeves's leather folder. Then she added one more thing, a torn scrap of Clara's real handwriting, just visible enough to tempt curiosity. Why leave that? Marjorie asked. Because loose ends are irresistible, Miss Marple murmured. He will follow this thread. Footsteps echoed. Miss Marple and Marjorie doused the lantern and slipped behind the curtain. Reeves entered, coat draped over one arm, baton case in hand. He did not look around nervously the way guilty men often did. Instead, he paused, listening like a hunter. He walked to the conductor's stand. He saw the torn scrap, then the score. He opened it. He read, and then he smiled. It was a cold, thin smile, a smile that did not reach his eyes. It was the expression of a man who believed he had regained control. He folded the music and slipped it into his coat. He tucked away the small paper scrap, too, recognizing Clara's handwriting instantly. Clara's message. Clara alive. The bait was taken. Reeves left the hall as quietly as he had entered. Only long after his footsteps faded did Miss Marple and Marjorie step out. Marjorie's voice trembled. "He'll go after her now." "Yes," Miss Marple said. "And that is exactly what we need." A horse-drawn cart waited near the churchyard gate, its driver broad-shouldered, cap low over his brow nodded once. "Evenin', miss," said Mr. Crane, the gardener from Heatherbridge Hall. "You said you'd be needing quiet transport." "Thank you," Miss Marple said, climbing up. Marjorie followed, pulling her shawl tight against the cold. Crane flicked the reins. "So he took the bait?" "He did," Miss Marple said. "And now he will try to finish what he began. He thinks Clara has hidden something. He'll want to silence her himself." "And you know when he'll move?" Crane asked. "Yes," Miss Marple said. Tonight, Elm Lane lay on the neglected edge of Heatherbridge. Trees leaned over the road like eavesdroppers. Old cottages slumped under moss and ivy. Nobody came here without a reason. Crane stopped the cart before a boarded cottage. Marjorie hurried to the door and unlocked it. Inside, the air smelled of dust and cold stone. A faint lantern glowed in the next room. There curled on a narrow cot, pale as frost, was Clara Winslow. Marjorie ran to her. "Clara, darling, it's me." Clara jolted at the sound, eyes wide with fright. But when she recognized Marjorie, she sagged with exhausted relief. Miss Marple approached quietly. "Good evening, Clara." Clara did not speak, but watched her cautiously. "I know you're afraid," Miss Marple said gently. "And I know you've been hiding to protect someone. But Reeves will not stop until you are silent." Clara's lips trembled. "He'll kill me if he finds me." Miss Marple nodded. "Yes, which is why we must be ready for him." Crane stood by the door. "Inspector Hall knows the plan." "He is waiting," Miss Marple said. "But Reeves is not working alone. There is someone helping him, someone close." Marjorie looked sharply at her. "Who?" "I don't know yet," Miss Marple said. "But I will." Hours passed. The night grew heavy. Then 3 hard knocks on the door. Clara flinched. Crane reached for the lantern. Marjorie froze. Miss Marple didn't move. "That's him," Clara whispered. Miss Marple exhaled slowly. "No," she said, "not just him." The knocking came again, 3 deliberate raps. Miss Marple turned toward the door. "That," she said quietly, "is the accomplice." Chapter 7. The Accomplice Revealed. The knock came again. 3 sharp raps, measured, deliberate. Whoever stood outside wasn't begging to be let in. They were announcing their authority. Marjorie Bell froze. Clara trembled beside Miss Marple, fingers clinging to the older woman's sleeve like a child in a storm. Mr. Crane set down the lantern carefully, as though caution alone might prevent alarm from erupting. Miss Marple moved first, but not to the door. She stepped instead to the table, laid a steadying hand on the cooling kettle, a calming gesture rather than a practical one. Then she nodded to Mr. Crane. "We must answer," she said quietly. Marjorie caught her arm. "You can't open that door, if that's Reeves." "It is not Reeves," Miss Marple said calmly. "Reeves doesn't knock. He watches and waits. But this—" She tilted her head toward the sound. "This is someone who believes. They have the right to enter." A 4th knock came, firmer now. Crane stepped to the side of the door, one hand on the latch, ready for whatever came next. He pulled it open. Inspector Howey stood there. No one spoke at first. Hale's hair was damp from the fog outside. His coat hung heavy. He looked like a man who had walked through too much night and learned things he did not want to know. "Miss Marple," he said, "I had a feeling I would find you here." "So you know Clara is alive," she said. "I do," Holly replied. "And I know more than that now." His gaze settled on Marjorie Bell. "You hid her. You lied to the police. You interfered with an investigation." Marjorie straightened. "I protected her." "That wasn't your decision to make," Holly said sharply. Clara flinched at the tone. Holly noticed and took a breath. "Marjorie Bell, I must place you under arrest. And Clara," he added more gently, "I am placing you under police protection. Reeves will not reach you now." Marjorie's voice was cold. "Protection from Lionel Reeves? From Helena Frost? Or perhaps from someone else entirely?" "Enough," Holly said. "There are things you don't understand." Miss Marple's eyes fixed on him. "Then perhaps now is the time to explain." Holly shut the door behind him, as if bracing against more than the cold. "Reeves isn't our only suspect anymore," he said. Holly turned toward Clara. "Why did Reeves threaten you?" Clara hesitated. Miss Marple squeezed her wrist gently. "You can trust him now, my dear," Clara swallowed, "because I found the ledger." Holly frowned. "Which ledger?" "The adoption ledger," Clara whispered. "The first one, the one with my real name, and someone else's." Holly leaned forward. "Whose name?" "My mother's," Clara said. "Helena Frost?" He nodded grimly. "Yes." "But someone crossed out her name in the ledger," Clara continued. "Someone wrote another name beneath it. Someone who approved the adoption." Her voice trembled. "Inspector Hall." Marjorie gasped. Crane stiffened. Miss Marple closed her eyes, not in shock but confirmation. Hale's voice came slowly. "I didn't sign it, but your name was forged," Holly said. "I only discovered it last night. Reeves used my name years ago to hide his own." Marjorie's voice rose with disbelief. "Why use your name?" "To cover his tracks," Holly said. "He forged my identity to authorize Clara's adoption illegally." Holly stepped further inside. "Everything began 20 years ago, before Helena Frost married. Before Reeves was a conductor, they were young and in love." Clara stared at him, heart pounding. "They had a child," Holly said gently. "You. But Helena was engaged to a man from an influential family. A scandal would have destroyed her future. Her father arranged a secret adoption quiet, unregistered, untraceable." Clara's voice was bitter. "Because of me." Holly shook his head. "Because of the Frost name. Your grandfather made that choice." Miss Marple folded her hands. "And Reeves?" "Reeves was paid to disappear," said Holly. "The Frosts gave him money. He vanished, then reappeared years later with new names, new lies bent on revenge. He blackmailed Helena Frost for years. And when Clara learned the truth," Miss Marple said, "she threatened to expose him." Holly nodded. "Reeves panicked. He hunted for the letter. Clara found proof of who she is." Marjorie pressed a hand to her mouth. "But you still haven't said why you came alone," Miss Marple observed. Hal exhaled slowly. "Because Reeves isn't working alone." Silence gripped the room. "He has help," Holly continued. "Someone here in Heatherbridge. Someone who has been cleaning up after him." Marjorie's whisper trembled. "No." Miss Marple held Hale's gaze. "You know who it is?" "I do." He stepped to the table and pointed to Clara's broken violin. "This isn't just an instrument. It hides something." "Clara hid a letter in it," Marjorie said faintly. "No," Holly replied. "Someone else hid something recently, after Clara disappeared." He reached inside the cracked violin and withdrew a small object wrapped in cloth. When he unwrapped it, metal glinted in the firelight. A silver tuning key engraved with a crest. Marjorie gasped, the same crest she had seen on Helena Frost's brooch. Miss Marple's expression shifted. She didn't know everything yet, but she knew enough. "There's only one person," Holly said, "who tampered with this violin. One person who found Clara. One person who has been moving evidence in and out of sight." His eyes moved past Miss Marple and landed on Marjorie Bell. Marjorie went very still. "No," she whispered. "You didn't know at first," Holly said. "But you helped him." Her head shook violently. "I didn't know what he planned. He told me Clara was dangerous, that she would ruin Helena Frost, that she would destroy herself if the truth came out." Crane stepped forward, voice low. "Who told you that?" Tears filled Marjorie's eyes. Her shoulders trembled. Her voice came out as a broken whisper. Edgar Winslow. Chapter 8. The Father's Lie. For several heartbeats, silence held the abandoned cottage in a frozen grip. The air felt tight, hollow, as if the walls themselves had flinched at Marjorie Bell's last words. Clara stared at her, disbelief blazing beneath shock. "My father?" she whispered. "You're saying he was helping Lionel Reeves?" Marjorie looked worn to the bone, trembling as she stood by the broken chair. "I didn't know who he was truly helping," she said. "He only asked me to watch you, to keep you quiet, to tell him if anyone came asking questions." Her voice broke. "I didn't know the truth, then God help me, I didn't." Inspector Hale's jaw tightened. "You should have come to the police." Marjorie gave a bitter laugh. "The police? And what would you have done? Arrested Edgar Winslow, the decorated soldier, the widow's helper, the doting father who speaks of duty every Sunday?" Clara flinched at the bitterness in her voice. "No one would have believed me," Marjorie continued. "I barely believed myself until last week." Miss Marple laid a calm, steadying hand on Marjorie's arm. "No more evasions," she said gently. "How did Edgar Winslow become involved?" Marjorie drew a shaking breath. "He came to me before Clara vanished. Told me she had become unstable, that she'd discovered lies about her past and meant to ruin her family over them. He said Reeves was manipulating her and wanted to blackmail Mrs. Frost." Her eyes flicked to Clara. He sounded so convincing, so desperate to protect his daughter. Inspector Howe exchanged a sharp look with Miss Marple. That story was the exact opposite of the truth. Marjorie pressed on. "He said Reeves would threaten Clara's life unless she destroyed certain documents. But he begged me not to tell her he was involved. She wouldn't understand discipline, he said. He just needed time to keep her safe." Clara shook her head slowly. "He lied to you, Marjorie. He lied to everyone." Marjorie looked destroyed. "Reeves wasn't the only one who found you that night," she said faintly. "Edgar did, too." Inspector Hale's voice hardened. "Explain." "I heard Clara scream," Marjorie said. "I ran toward the woods. Reeves had her by the arms. She was fighting. Then Edgar appeared. Reeves dropped her. Instantly." "He didn't go after Reeves?" Clara asked, horrified. "No." Marjorie's voice was a whisper. "He started shouting at you instead. He said if you didn't stop digging into the past, something terrible would happen. You begged him to help you." Tears filled her eyes. "He raised his hand, Clara, as if he would strike you." Inspector Hall swore under his breath. "That was when I hit Reeves," Marjorie said, shaking. "I had to get Clara away." Inspector Hall took a step closer. "Where did Winslow go?" "He didn't follow us," Marjorie said. "He stayed behind. I thought, God help me, I thought he was trying to frighten Clara into staying safe." She swallowed. "The next day he came to me. He said Clara had made a dangerous mistake running away, that people would ask questions he couldn't allow." "Questions about Clara's real mother," Miss Marple said softly. Marjorie nodded. "He wanted me to hide Clara for a while. Hide her from Reeves, from everyone. He said people must believe Clara simply left. He said it was for her own good. Inspector Hall gave a bitter laugh. Fixed, he said. He would fix things? Clara stared into the lantern flame. He said he loved me. He let Reeves hurt me. He protected a lie instead of his own daughter. Not any lie, Miss Marple replied. A lie powerful enough to destroy Helena Frost and ruin Edgar Winslow. He built a life on that lie. 19 years. He won't let it crumble. Marjorie gripped Clara's arm. He promised me he would stop Reeves. I believed him. No, Inspector Hawley said grimly. He used Reeves. Marjorie shook her head. No, he hated Reeves. He was trying to outplay him, just in secret. He thought he could control everything Clara, Reeves, the truth by himself. Miss Marple nodded. Control is a dangerous obsession. Clara lifted her head. Where is he now? Inspector Hale's expression darkened. Gone. His house is empty. I sent a constable there. He's disappeared. Mr. Crane spoke quietly, so he knows Clara is alive. Inspector Howell nodded grimly, and that she's talking. Miss Marple's gaze drifted toward the window, where fog pressed against the cracked glass. When men build their lives on lies, she said softly, they don't surrender, they break. Clara's voice was barely a whisper. What will he do? Miss Marple turned back to her. Her face was grave. Edgar Winslow will do what desperate men do when they feel the truth closing in. Run? Marjorie asked weakly. No, Miss Marple said. He will try to end it, quickly, permanently. Inspector Hale's voice dropped. By killing someone. Miss Marple looked straight at Clara. He will bring a body. Clara staggered. A body? As long as you are missing, Clara, people will search for you, Miss Marple said gently. But if a body appears burned, drowned, made unrecognizable, the search ends. The past remains buried. And Edgar Winslow becomes a grieving father respected, above suspicion. Marjorie let out a broken cry. No, he wouldn't. Yes, Miss Marple said softly. He would, and he has already chosen his victim. Crane stepped forward. Who? Miss Marple turned to Marjorie. Her eyes were filled not with cruelty, but with tragic certainty. You, she said. Marjorie stared, frozen. Me? Miss Marple nodded. You match Clara's build. You vanished days ago. You could be dressed in Clara's clothes, and your body used to end the case forever. Marjorie collapsed into a chair. He will kill you tonight, Miss Marple said gently. A terrible silence fell. Then Clara straightened. Tears no longer fell. Her eyes were steel. No, she said. Inspector Hawley looked at her sharply. Clara. No, she repeated firmly. No one else dies because of me. No more lies? No more hiding? Set your trap, Inspector, tonight. Use me as bait. Miss Marple studied her. She did not smile. So, my dear, she said softly, they shall. Chapter 9. A Village of Mirrors. Heatherbridge did not sleep. Night wrapped itself around the village like a warning, heavy and waiting. Lamp posts flickered in the mist, doors were bolted twice, and curtains were pulled tight against the dark. Yet beneath the surface of stillness, something moved, a pulse of fear, spreading from house to house like a quiet illness. Inside the abandoned cottage on Elm Lane, a plan had formed. A desperate one. A necessary one. Inspector Howell paced in front of the fireplace, jaw set, mind racing. We're walking on a knife's edge, he said. Once word spreads Clara is alive, both Reeves and Edgar Winslow will come for her, each believing they must silence her first. We want them to come, Mr. Crane said, arms folded. We can't catch foxes hiding in hedges. We bring them into the open. Miss Marple nodded approvingly. Exactly. But we must be careful. 2 hunters stalking the same. Prey are twice as dangerous and twice as unpredictable. Clara sat very still, hands clasped in her lap. What must I do? Miss Marple answered gently. "Begin telling the truth publicly." Clara frowned. "But Helena Frost, my mother." "She deserves the truth too," Miss Marple said. "But for now we need to make Reeves and your father believe you intend to expose everything your birth, the ledger, Reeves's blackmail, and what really happened the night you vanished." Inspector Hall leaned over the table, spreading a village map across the wood. "We need a controlled location, somewhere secluded but visible, somewhere we can trap them both." Crane tapped the paper. "The old quarry." Holly hesitated. "Risky. Sheer drop. Blind approach." "Only if you don't use your head," Crane said. "There's one way in and one way out. Perfect for catching cornered beasts." Hal exhaled slowly. "All right. But we'll need eyes set in every direction." Marjorie Bell, sitting quietly in the far corner, looked up. "What about me?" Clara turned sharply. "You're not coming." "Yes, I am," Marjorie said firmly. "If Edgar means to make me disappear, I'd rather face him than wait in fear. And I owe you the truth, Clara. I let myself be used. Let me help make it right." Clara hesitated, then nodded once. Inspector Hall pointed to villagers' houses on the map. "I'll keep 2. Constables nearby, 1 on the ridge, 1 at the access road. Crane, you set a torch signal if Reeves arrives. Marjorie, you stay at Clara's side." "And me?" Miss Marple asked pleasantly. Holly sighed. "You stay behind us, quietly pretending you're not the one running half this investigation." Miss Marple beamed. "Excellent. To spring a trap, first you must lay a trail. The bait would not be Clara, it would be the village itself." Miss Marple and Marjorie walked through Heatherbridge the next morning with deliberate slowness. They stopped at Mrs. Hartwell's for tea, paused to admire Mrs. Price's washing line, and chatted to Mr. Timmins outside the post office. And to each, Miss Marple whispered, "Did you hear? Clara Winslow is alive and she means to speak. Rumor travels like fire in dry grass." Within an hour the green buzzed. Within 2 hours 2 separate messengers rode out of the village, one heading toward Heatherbridge Hall, the other toward Edgar Winslow's cottage. Reeves and Edgar had heard. By afternoon, Clara's name had become a storm. Some claimed they had seen her in the churchyard. Others swore she was hiding in London. Someone even insisted she had fled to France. Miss Marple listened and nodded. The lie of the village is a useful tool, because hidden inside every lie is a single grain of truth, and tonight that truth would be exposed. As dusk settled again, Clara stepped out of Marjorie's cottage wearing her old concert coat and a plain wool cap. No disguise, no deception. She would let Reeves and Edgar see her. She wanted them to. Marjorie tightened Clara's scarf. "You don't have to do this, love." "Yes," Clara said, "I do." Crane arrived with the cart just after 7. "Everything's ready at the quarry." Inspector Holly approached, coat collar up, face grim. "We move now." No hesitation, no heroics. Miss Marple followed behind, walking stick in hand. Marjorie gave her a look. "You're coming too?" "Well, someone must ensure everyone behaves sensibly," Miss Marple said cheerfully. Clara actually smiled. They set off through the trees, past the churchyard, past the fields silvered by frost, past the road that branched toward Heatherbridge Hall. A lone owl called above them. Ahead lay the old quarry, a place no one went anymore, a place with room for echoes. Night thickened by the time they reached the quarry's lip. A crude wooden shelter set near the cliffside. Crane had outfitted it with lanterns and blankets to make the scene look like a meeting site. "This is where the message said you'd be," Holly told Clara. "We made sure it reached the right ears. Now all we do is wait." Clara looked out over the dark quarry. "What if they don't come?" "Oh, they'll come," Marjorie whispered. Miss Marple nodded. "Fear brings people exactly where they hope never to go. The first signal came at 9:22. A torch blinked twice from the ridge overlooking the road. Crane's voice was low. "Reeves." Clara stiffened. Hull signaled his men to hold. A figure emerged from the trees, coat dark, hat low. A man walking with purpose. Lionel Reeves. He carried no lantern. Only a violin case. Reeves stopped a dozen yards away. His voice was silk and poison. "Clara." Clara stepped forward bravely. "Lionel." He moved closer. "You've caused so much trouble, Clara, so much noise," he said softly. "But tonight it ends." "You blackmailed my mother," Clara said. "You ruined lives for profit." "For survival," he corrected. "Your mother made her choices. She paid me to disappear, but I don't disappear." His voice sharpened. "I collect." "And now?" Clara asked. "What do you plan to collect?" Reeves lifted the violin case. Miss Marple and Hallie watched every twitch. "I told you once," Reeves said. "Music holds everything: grief, rage, truth, and now death." He clicked open the latches. But inside was no violin, only rope. He reached for Clara. Hallie moved. "Reeves, don't." Too late. Reeves seized Clara by the wrist and dragged her toward the cliff's edge. Then he stopped, frozen, because a shadow had stepped from the trees behind him, a familiar shadow, holding a revolver. Edgar Winslow. Reeves didn't release Clara, but he didn't move either. "Edgar," he said, almost amused. "Right on time." Winslow's eyes were wild. "Let her go," Reeves smiled. "We meet again." "You lied to me," Winslow growled. "You promised she would be safe." "She would have been," Reeves said, "if she had stayed quiet. You're the one who pushed her. You're the one who made her run." Winslow's hands shook. "It ends tonight?" Reeves tilted his head. "Yes, but not the way you think." He reached slowly into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper. "I have the adoption ledger, Edgar," Reeves said. "Your signature, your false oath, your crime. If I die, this gets mailed, and you lose everything." Winslow trembled. Reeves tightened his grip on Clara's wrist. "So here's how this goes," he said coldly. "She dies tonight, a tragic accident. And you and I, our secrets go back to sleep." Miss Marple stepped forward. Her voice cut through the night like a blade. "Imperfect offer, Mr. Reeves." He froze. "Because," she said softly, lifting a small leather notebook, "we already have the ledger." Reeves stared. Winslow blinked. Hallie moved. Everything broke at once. Reeves shoved Clara hard. Toward the edge. Chapter 10. The Cliff's Edge. Everything happened in a single violent second. Clara stumbled backward, boots sliding on loose stone as Reeves shoved her toward the quarry's edge. The darkness behind her yawned into a 40-foot fall. She grasped wildly for balance. Nothing but cold air. "Clara!" Marjorie screamed. Inspector Howe lunged forward, but Reeves was faster. He yanked Clara back by her coat, using her as a living shield. A knife glinted in his hand, pulled from inside his jacket. "Everybody stay back," Reeves snarled. It was no longer the polished conductor who spoke, but the thing beneath the predator who had rehearsed this kind of violence long before tonight. Edgar Winslow stood frozen for a half-second, gun raised but shaking. He wanted to shoot Reeves. He also wanted to save Clara. The conflict paralyzed him. "Let her go, Reeves," Hallie said, voice measured, hands raised. "You won't get out of here alive." Reeves chuckled. "Oh, I don't plan to get out of here at all, not without her." Clara winced as the blade pressed at her throat. Miss Marple stepped forward, not recklessly, but firmly. "Mr. Reeves," she said, voice calm as warm tea, "this is untidy." Reeves' head jerked toward her, disbelief flickering. "What?" "You have made a terrible mess," Miss Marple said, voice almost sympathetic. "Murder is noisy, blackmail, Messier still. You believed yourself in control. You believed secrets could be preserved if one was clever enough, tidy enough." She tilted her head. "But secrets, you see, have a way of leaking, just like music." "Shut up," Reeves hissed, knife digging harder. Clara gasped. Crane shifted behind Reeves, watchful, waiting. Hall caught his eye and shook his head. "Not yet. You underestimated something," Miss Marple went on. "Not the law, not money, not even truth. You underestimated love." "Yes," Miss Marple said gently. "He failed, but he tried. Even lies can be born from love." Reeves hesitated just long enough. Clara moved. She stomped hard on his boot. He flinched. Mr. Crane struck, slamming his shoulder into Reeves, ripping Clara free. The knife sliced air. Then Reeves staggered and fell over the edge. Everyone froze. A terrible silence followed. Then a hand grabbed the rocky edge. Reeves dangled, feet scraping uselessly against the cliffside. Inspector Holly was there in 2 strides, hand outstretched. "Grab on." Reeves clung, eyes wild, not afraid of death, but afraid of losing control. "Take my hand," Holly shouted. Reeves didn't. Instead, he glared not at Hale but at Edgar Winslow. "You think this ends with me?" Reeves hissed. "You can't bury this, Edgar. You can't bury her." Holly tried again, but Reeves made his decision. He let go. He fell without a scream. When the sound came, stone, body, darkness, it was final. Marjorie fell to her knees, arms wrapped around Clara. Crane stepped back, chest heaving but controlled. Holly closed his eyes briefly. Not from guilt, but from grim necessity. Some men choose death. Reeves had chosen his. Clara stood trembling. "It's over," she whispered. "No," said Miss Marple quietly. "It isn't." She turned slowly toward Edgar Winslow, because he was no longer holding his revolver at his side. He was pointing it at himself. "No," Clara gasped. Winslow's face was carved with despair. "I protected you," he said hoarsely. "I did everything for you." "You lied to me," Clara whispered. "You hurt me." He flinched. "You don't understand. You weren't supposed to find out. Not like this." Miss Marple stepped forward. "Stop this," she said firmly. "Death does not fix truth. It only abandons it." "I was chosen to be her father," Winslow said weakly. "I earned that right. I raised her, loved her. She was mine, not theirs." "She was never a possession," Miss Marple said. "She is a person with her own story, her own life. It was not your right to steal that from her. I kept her safe. You kept her caged." Winslow's hand trembled on the gun. Clara stepped forward, and for the first time she did not sound afraid. "Father," she said softly, "look at me." He did. "I didn't need you to be perfect," she said. "I just needed you to be honest. You could have told me the truth, but you didn't trust me." He stared shattered. "You don't need to do this," Clara whispered. "Not for me. Don't run. Don't hide. Don't die in another lie." Tears finally broke from Edgar Winslow's eyes. His hand fell to his side. The gun dropped into the dirt. Inspector Howey moved forward and quietly retrieved it. Winslow closed his eyes. "I only ever wanted to be her father," he said. "You still can be," Clara said gently. The dawn after the storm. They didn't sleep. None of them. The darkness began to lift over Heatherbridge, and with it the quietest morning the village had ever known. Edgar Winslow was taken into custody, not as a killer, but as a man who had aided a criminal, misled the law, and concealed a missing person. His sins were real, but so was his remorse. Marjorie Bell faced charges. but Holly promised she wouldn't go to prison. Her crime was loyalty, misguided but rooted in courage. Clara would testify. She would tell everything. And Helena Frost, who stood waiting outside the constable station at dawn, finally embraced the daughter she had lost. Heatherbridge would never forget the scandal. Some villagers would whisper, some would judge, but others, those with gentler hearts, would say, this was not a story of shame. It was a story of survival, Miss Marple's final note. Later that afternoon, Miss Marple sat in the garden behind the vicarage, knitting a soft gray scarf. Inspector Howell joined her, letter in hand. "It's from Clara," he said. "She's leaving Heatherbridge." "Good," Miss Marple said. "Some roots grow better in new ground." "She'll be with her mother," Holly added. "And she'll play again. She says music was never the enemy. Silence was." Miss Marple smiled. A very wise girl. Hall sat across from her. "There's still something I don't understand." "Only one thing?" Miss Marple teased. He chuckled. "You knew Reeves would go to the quarry. You knew Winslow would follow. How?" Miss Marple laid her knitting in her lap and looked at him gently. "Because men who live by control are very predictable. Reeves believed he owned Clara's fear. Winslow believed he owned Clara's life. So when fear fell away and when Clara chose to speak, both men came running to claim her. Bravery shaped the trap tonight, not mine, hers." Holly nodded slowly. Miss Marple glanced at the rising sun. "There are tidy crimes, Inspector," she said, "and terribly untidy truths, but truth always comes. Even when people try to silence it." She resumed knitting. "Music hid everything," Holly said, recalling the message Reeves believed. "No," Miss Marple said softly. "Music revealed everything. Clara wrote her truth where someone finally listened." The wind shifted, carrying the faintest echo of violin strings from the village. A warm-up, perhaps, or just memory. Holly stood. "Well, thank you, Miss Marple." She gave him a pleasant smile. "Oh, I didn't do very much." He laughed. "You never do, and yet everything happens around you." Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. "People reveal themselves," she said simply. "One only needs to pay attention," and she did. "Always. I am very happy that you are still here. Thanks for watching. Please like the video and subscribe the channel."